Welcome to a fascinating journey through the life and mind of one of history's greatest writers. Today, we'll dive into the extraordinary story of Leo Tolstoy, the man who unraveled the enigma of existence. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you've achieved, fame, wealth, family, suddenly seems empty and meaningless. That's exactly what happened to Leo Tolstoy, the genius behind masterpieces like War and Peace and Anna Karenina. But how does someone at the peak of success come to question the very purpose of life? Throughout this video, we'll explore Tolstoy's fascinating journey in search of life's meaning. We'll discover how he faced nihilism, flirted with absurdism, and finally arrived at a surprising conclusion that might change the way you see the world. Our journey will take us from Tolstoy's early years, through his existential crisis at 50, to his final transformation. We'll examine his internal struggles, his philosophical explorations, and finally the revelation that changed everything. Leo Tolstoy was born in 1828 into a Russian aristocratic family. From an early age, he experienced life's extremes, wealth and privilege on one hand and devastating loss on the other. At 2, Tolstoy lost his mother, and at 9, his father. These early experiences of loss planted the seeds for his future existential questions. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to grow up in a world of privilege, but with a deep emotional void? For young Tolstoy, this dichotomy became the foundation of his worldview. He had everything money could buy, but felt that something fundamental was missing. Contrary to the expectations of his social class, Tolstoy developed a deep distrust of the Russian Orthodox Church and established institutions. He wrote, "Religious doctrine accepted on trust and supported by external pressure gradually fades away under the influence of knowledge and life experiences that conflict with it." Picture a young aristocrat sitting in a luxurious library, surrounded by books and riches, but with a heart heavy with doubts. This was Tolstoy, a man divided between the material world he inherited and the spiritual questions that tormented him. But what happens when a man who has everything suddenly realizes he has nothing? This realization would hit Tolstoy like lightning at the age of 50, triggering a crisis that nearly broke him. For almost 5 decades, Tolstoy lived a life seemingly free of major worries. He wrote masterpieces, War and Peace with over 1,200 pages, sold millions of copies, managed a large estate, and raised a large family. However, at 50, everything changed. Tolstoy, often compared to Fyodor Dostoevsky in terms of philosophical depth, entered an existential crisis so intense that sleep became his only escape. In his essay, A Confession, he revealed, "I had to deceive myself to keep from giving up on life." Have you ever asked yourself why we're here? What's the purpose of life? Why should we care about anything if it's all going to end? These were the questions that consumed Tolstoy day and night. Tolstoy, the world-acclaimed literary genius, became like a child emotionally, constantly asking why. Why life? Why existence? Why death? He believed there was something fundamentally wrong with his soul. How can someone who created entire worlds in his novels feel so lost in his own world? This is the irony Tolstoy faced, a contradiction that brought him to the brink of despair. But what stopped Tolstoy from giving up? What made him choose a different journey? The answer lies in a parable he deeply reflected upon. Tolstoy shared a parable in A Confession that perfectly illustrates his struggle. Imagine a man fleeing from a wild beast. He falls into an abandoned well, grabs onto a branch on the wall, but sees a dragon waiting at the bottom. Trapped between 2 deadly dangers, the man notices drops of honey on the branch's leaves and tastes them, momentarily distracted from his terrible predicament. What if you were that man in the well? The beast above represents existential fear, the dragon below is inevitable death, and the honey drops are life's small pleasures. Tolstoy saw his own existence reflected in this story. Like the man in the well, we all face the abyss of the unknown. But the question is, how do we react to it? Tolstoy decided to seek answers, exploring almost every ideology available. What did Tolstoy discover in his search for truth? The answer might surprise you and change how you view life. Tolstoy delved into the writings of philosophers like Solomon, Socrates, and Buddha, but instead of finding answers, he encountered a disturbing conclusion. Happy is he who was never born. Death is better than life, and one must free oneself from life. From ancient philosophy, Tolstoy turned to modern science. He studied Darwinism, but saw it as a manifestation of nihilism, suggesting that humans are nothing more than an accidental creation in the universe. How can knowledge, which should illuminate, only deepen the darkness? Tolstoy found himself trapped between the wisdom of the ancients and the discoveries of the moderns, finding comfort in neither. Disillusioned with philosophy and science, Tolstoy turned his gaze to the people around him. After much reflection, he concluded that there were 4 ways in which people dealt with the terrible position we all find ourselves in. What are these 4 ways? And which one did Tolstoy finally embrace? The answer might surprise you. First way, ignorance. Tolstoy observed that some people simply accepted life's absurdity without questioning it. They lived their lives without thinking much about it. This approach resembles Albert Camus' Absurdism, which argued that we should embrace the absurdity of existence with an attitude of defiance and resilience. Could you live like this? Ignoring life's big questions and simply moving forward? Tolstoy believed this wasn't a lasting solution. After all, how can one remain ignorant when one has a fully functioning mind? Second way, Epicureanism. Some people sought peace through indulgence, filling their lives with pleasures to distract themselves from the suffering and uncertainty of existence. They pursued material wealth, relationships, and entertainment to escape the fear of death and life's meaninglessness. But Tolstoy criticized this approach. How can momentary pleasure solve the deeper questions of existence? For him, living solely for pleasure resulted in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. Imagine living a life dedicated only to pleasure. At first it might seem wonderful, but what happens when pleasures start to lose their flavor, and when the reality of mortality knocks at your door? The first 2 ways didn't satisfy Tolstoy, but what about the other 2? Did he find the answer he was looking for? Third way, giving up on life. Tolstoy observed that some people, overwhelmed by the absurdity of existence, considered ending their journey prematurely. This is a grim perspective that Tolstoy couldn't accept. It's crucial to emphasize that giving up is never the answer. If you're going through an existential crisis, keep moving forward. The answers may not be immediate, but they will come in time. Seek professional help if needed. Fourth way, existential limbo. This is a state where people recognize the inherent meaninglessness and suffering of life, but feel trapped between 2 extremes. They don't reject life, but they don't fully embrace it either. How can someone exist without really living? Tolstoy saw this as the weakest form of living because it offers no resolution or progress. The person is fully aware of life's absurdity and existential challenges, but remains paralyzed, unable to seek purpose or hope. None of these 4 ways satisfied Tolstoy. So what did he do? The answer came from an unexpected source. In his journey to find life's meaning, Tolstoy began to observe the poor peasants. Surprisingly, he noticed that despite facing immense hardships, they maintained an unwavering faith in God. How could it be that people with so little materially could have so much spiritually? This observation marked a significant turning point in Tolstoy's understanding of life's purpose. What did Tolstoy learn from the peasants that completely changed his worldview? Tolstoy realized that life couldn't be fully understood through reason alone. It required belief in something greater than the material world. This realization marked a profound turning point for Tolstoy. How could someone who spent his life seeking rational answers find peace in faith? This was Tolstoy's surprising transformation. Picture Tolstoy, the great intellectual, sitting humbly among the peasants, learning from their simple but unshakable faith. This scene captures the essence of Tolstoy's transformation. Like Tolstoy, we can all find ourselves in moments of existential crisis. The question is, are we willing to look beyond our own limitations to find meaning? What if, like Tolstoy, you discovered that the answer to life's big questions isn't in books or logic, but in the simple faith of those you least expect? How did this revelation change Tolstoy's life? The answer is as profound as it is surprising. Tolstoy, once dominated by intellectual struggles, found meaning in the very faith he had previously rejected. Although his version of faith wasn't exactly orthodox Christianity, it was deeply rooted in his belief in the infinite and his understanding of God. The man who once questioned everything now found peace in accepting something greater than himself. Tolstoy began to live a more modest life, giving away much of his wealth, a decision his family didn't appreciate. How can simplicity bring more satisfaction than all the riches and successes of the world? This was Tolstoy's final lesson. In his later years, Tolstoy could be seen living simply, helping the poor and dedicating himself to a life of humility and service. The great writer had become a man of simple faith, finally finding the peace he had long sought. Tolstoy's journey reminds us that we can all at some point find ourselves struggling with life's big questions. The question is, will we have the courage to seek answers beyond the obvious? Imagine if, like Tolstoy, you discovered that the answer to life's meaning isn't in material success or recognition, but in faith and service to others. How would that change your life and you? What's your purpose in life? What gives meaning to your existence? Perhaps it's time to reflect on these questions, just as Tolstoy did. As Tolstoy once wrote, "The sole meaning of life is to serve humanity." Perhaps this is the key to unraveling the enigma of existence. This week, I challenge you to reflect on what really matters in your life. Spend a few minutes each day contemplating your purpose and how you can live more meaningfully. Share your reflections on the meaning of life in the comments. What have you learned from Tolstoy's journey? Together, we can continue this important conversation. Leo Tolstoy passed away on November 20th, 1910, at the age of 82, having lived his final years with the peace and purpose he had long sought. His journey reminds us that the search for life's meaning is one of the most important we can undertake. Remember, as Tolstoy discovered, sometimes the deepest answers are found in the most unexpected places. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and above all, keep living with purpose.